record this for posterity. So thank you for being here at the Mutual Aid Network Mapping Summit on our second to last day. And I think it's been really great, and it'll be really nice, even greater, to be finished after this long week. But it's been a pleasure, and I think that we're learning a lot. So thanks for being here and checking out what we're learning. So I'm just going to give a quick overview. We will do introductions, we'll do a quick overview of what the point has been for the week and super quick snapshot of some of the progress that we've made. And then we're going to hear from Michelle Bowens talking about whatever you want to talk about for a while, synthesizing some of what we're doing and really anything that you want to talk about. So that's exciting. And then after that, we're going to spend some time going into what highlights from this week, like what have we concluded, what have we learned, what do we see that we could take forward in some snippets. And today our task is to at least get a healthy head start, if not finish a quick, rough video that we want to share with the world. So it might be too ambitious to finish a short little video, but we can start a short little video and show a draft of it tomorrow. So tomorrow, same time, we're going to be joined by people from South Africa and Berlin. I think Tom Llewellyn from Shareable is joining us. So yes, it'll be a good day tomorrow to wrap up. So quickly, let's just do introductions, and then we'll give a short recap of what we've been doing here. I'm Stephanie Rearick. I am founder, former co-director of Dane County Time Bank, the 10-year-old time bank that's made some innovations here in Madison. And then it's an outgrowth of that. Actually, I've been founder and now creative director of Networks, which has been a research and development effort to really look at how we organize differently, connect time banking and other cooperative economic tools, and use those in the service of redesigning work. So redesigning the economy so it works for everyone instead of the other way. Boyd, would you like to say hello? Okay, Boyd, are you there? And Justice is next if it takes a minute to hear from Boyd. Justice, you want to say hello?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I can barely hear you. It's choppy.
Oh, okay.
But if you can hear me.
Yes.
You hear me?
Yes.
I'm Justice, and I'm here in Cambridge. Hello.
Hello, thanks for being here. Boyd?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes. Hello?
Yeah, you're choppy to me. I think you can hear me. I'm Boyd Rossing. I'm here in Madison. I'm retired from UW, and I'm interested in issues of racial disparity and initiatives that address that are also sustainable and family supporting. I've done some work in those different areas and happy to be a part of this process.
Great, thank you. Kurt?
Yes, Kurt Roskoff from the Milwaukee area, a member of the working board of the Mutual Aid Network. Stephanie, I wonder if you reconnect to the Wi-Fi or whatever there, it seems like bandwidth is a challenge, and that's why it's chopping for us when you talk. There's not enough bandwidth to give us good sound.
Okay, then I will turn over the presentation to someone else so I don't have to lose everything. Well, is it any better now?
Yeah. No, but when you disconnect from the network, we're going to lose the meeting, so you will have to reconnect.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to make someone else the presenter. So it's still.
It doesn't matter. Oh, yeah, okay, maybe.
Yeah. All right, Paul, I'm making you the presenter. Maybe I need to make you the organizer too. All right, sorry.
I got booted off.
Oh, you did?
It's upstream of us, but I'll be.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Is it any better?
For the
actually
moment.
is, yes.
Okay. We might have resolved it in a different way. So let me know if it becomes a problem again.
We just shift it back to you.
All right.
Yeah, it should be back to me now. Okay, so next would be Michael. Hello. Or Kurt, did you say what you wanted to say before we got sidetracked?
Well, I guess I can just join in the enthusiasm for what's all being detailed out. A lot of potential for the work product that we're producing here for how it gets applied in the community and solve a lot of detail that nobody else on the planet may be doing. So this is exciting.
Thanks, great. Michael?
Sitting on the West Coast, Vancouver Island, listening with interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Steve?
Steve here in Chicago, and really been enjoying this week, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of you physically. Although it took Michelle and myself about 10 years to get together after we met each other.
That's funny. All right, thanks. Anyone else online? Scott with us today?
Yep, Scott Murto in Lansing, Michigan. I'm just extremely happy to be building a new economic paradigm with all you wonderful people. Let's have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so Michelle, just introduce yourself and then.
Yeah, Michel Bouwens, P2B Foundation. Happy to be here, Madison.
Janet Jones, resident of Madison, piano teacher and storyteller.
Great.
Paul Hartzog, futurist, but yesterday I got to put on my software architect hat for a while. That was fun.
Excellent.
Bob Haugen, I just wanted to say that yesterday, I think we made a bunch of progress. A bunch of us got together and did a whole big resource mapping, diagramming exercise on a big piece of paper, and then Paul and Lynn entered a whole bunch of that information into that spreadsheet we keep working on. And then Lynn and I started entering it into our funky computer program. You'll be able to see some of that today. And so I'm going to continue with my data entry task today.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, Lynn Foster, helping with the software and whatever Bob said. Yep.
All right, cool.
It was a very good day yesterday.
Great.
I'm John Guerin from Indianapolis, Indiana, formerly from Madison. Came out of labor community organizing and now work with the Art and Media Cooperative in Indianapolis. And I'll be helping out with some of the video making today. I'm excited.
Great, thanks. Brenda?
Brenda Conklin with the Social Justice Center in Occupy Madison, Executive Director of the County Research Center, a bunch of other organizations.
Great. David, you want to introduce yourself quick?
Sure. I sit on board at work, Master Worker Cooperatives, and had association with other cooperatives through the years.
Thanks. Okay. Oh, and Laura.
I'm the man bookkeeper and typing.
Thanks. And Laura does everything that makes the physical aspect of this possible. Making sure we have space and food and everything is running and properly. So thank you, Laura. Thank you, Laura. Okay. So I'm gonna just do the breeze over of what we've done so far and jump in. You'll hear more in detail at the end of this gathering when we start talking about what we want to be sure to share with the world in the form of a video and beyond. But at the beginning of the week, so first of all, we had some sense of what we wanted to do and what our capacity was and what we're looking to work toward. So we defined just sort of a general corridor where there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of complementary actually needs and assets from the Allied Drive, Food Desert, where there's a lot of co-op organizing happening, up through where Matrix Co-working and Horizon Co-working are, Badger Rock School, up through where the feed kitchen is, and where they're looking to create a local food production corridor. Through the corridor with Social Justice Center, Mother Fools Coffee House, Willie Street Co-op, Art Inn, which is where we are right now. Actually, Full Spectrum Solar that we were talking about yesterday is just a block away, I was noticing. And then out towards Sun Prairie, where the Dane County Time Bank has a capacity building initiative working on developing neighbor care teams. And we had set some intentions even ahead of time in calling this gathering to begin with, but we also invited local community members to come and review the intentions that we were setting and suggest their own intentions for the week. So we have always intended to do everything this week in the most replicable way possible. The idea is to learn for the future, improve on what we're doing, and give it to the world. So use it for our own learning and also do what we can to educate new generations. So we have made it open to young people to come and observe. It's happened a tiny bit, but we're recording everything, so hopefully they'll keep observing it into the future. Having good articulation between what's replicable, like what can you apply in other communities, but also understanding the local conditions going in, so establishing baseline conditions. And we did a lot of analysis of our local context and started the whole week really talking about our local context. So that's one of the things that we want to share with people is how different approaches work under different local contexts. And then we talked about how important it is to distill who to map and what to map. We wanted to focus on existing partnerships, existing current action, really strengthening and recognizing current partnerships and building from and on those. We wanted to be sure to talk about food because that is a resource that is extremely inequitably distributed in this city. Wanted to focus on developing intra-city networks and intercity networks, connections between and among neighborhoods. Make sure to engage the schools, be explicit about the role race is playing in this and has historically, and really focus on overall well-being. And then the forward action that we have been aiming toward is in the short term using existing possibilities, networks, tools like the Dane County Time Bank and our transportation project, like a lot of cooperative efforts that we have here. But in the short term, to use those tools to more equitably distribute the resources that we have. So if we know what we have and what's needed where, we can not only more wisely apply ourselves toward networks that distribute better, but we get a good recruiting tool for potential partners in that. The medium term, really identifying what constitutes a basic human livelihood. So taking the notion of basic human income that everyone deserves, sort of a baseline level of support, but expanding it to include much more than money. So that ended up playing into posterity budgets where we showed how you can step down your need for money by building up more community supports. You'll hear more about that in the summary of the week. So working toward what does constitute a basic human livelihood for everyone in the area, and then starting to apply some of these ideas and tools toward making that reality. And then longer term, which doesn't have to mean way into the future, it just takes a little longer, using mutual aid networks and everything that we're learning here, to really incubate to fill gaps in resources. So create enterprises to increase local energy production, local food production, increase the availability of affordable housing, things like that. So really use this as a community, human-scaled economic and community development tool. And so I'll show you a little bit of what we did on the mapping thing yesterday, and how I'll have Lynn come up and show what that turns into when organized people get a hold of it. So, and those of you who come to a lot of my workshops and stuff, this probably looks really familiar because it's really similar to what we do for a lot of visioning exercises. But we broke it out into different sectors. Here, I'll make it a little bit bigger. So we wanted to map, as we were doing this mapping, as I said, it's an intention to go from existing networks and really bolster those. So we really started with mapping who do we have 0 degrees of separation with. And the who also, and it's always instructive to see how long it takes to get a common understanding of what you're talking about, always. But we were mapping particularly organizations, groups who we know want to participate in some way, or we're relatively certain they want to participate in some way. So that's pretty much it. But it's coming from a lot of longstanding relationships that many of us have with our organizations. So it would be confusing to try to go into it too much, but we kind of color-coded it, started with food, and showed the different organizations. They have circles around them, and tried to show what the resource flows are. So for example, Let's Eat Out is an organization that promotes food carts getting out into the community and really works on helping people develop that as a business. So here are the individual food carts. They're members of Let's Eat Out. They get infrastructure support there. Many of them also use the feed kitchen to prepare their food. Northside Planning Council has a role in overseeing the feed kitchen, and they're also working on developing this local food production corridor. So they're linked down with this resource in a square down here. So you can see it's messy, but you start to see a lot of different flows. Here's the Social Justice Center where Brenda and Tenant Resource Center are, and our Dane County Time Bank is, and Madison Community Co-op, and storage sanctuary storage for people who are homeless to keep their belongings. And we're looking to create a swap there. And then here in orange, we have space. In pink, we have housing. So here in orange, we have some co-working spaces, Matrix Co-working and Horizon Co-working, that are interested in partnering and helping Social Justice Center include some co-working in our space. So just to give you a sense of the real, so we start with most of these, the solid lines are real connections that are already in action or already like well underway, being explored and committed to. And then occasionally we have a dotted line. So for example, here's Allied Co-op as another organization. The need there is food, and we have a number of food organizations helping with Allied Co-op, but they're not giving us food, they're providing technical assistance. So that's great. Now there's one organization that could provide us a lot of free food that we're seeing, possibly Food for All. Oops, sorry. So that one has a dotted line to show that it's a potential connection. So Lynn, do you want to show us what you've done that helps start making sense of this?
Sure.
Let me get on here. Okay, great.
So this could be, moved around so that it's a lot more clear. We just didn't have time to do it this morning. What happened yesterday off of that lovely afternoon session that I thought was incredibly productive is that Paul and I sat down and derived kind of the shape of the mapping from that. That was the specifics and the specific organizations and the actual networking that's going on, resource flows that are happening. And so we derived a set of kind of basic functions and basic types of resources out of that. It may or may not be the right level of detail. You can do this at any kind of level of granularity that makes sense to you, that helps you, right? So we got a whole bunch of stuff in the food area, like that really started rounding out, which was awesome. But anyway, that's what we did. So this is kind of a network diagram of that. And then we started, after that, Bob and I started popping into April. We put this in the tool and then started popping the organizations in their proper kind of functional space. And so they kind of inherit. So we're working on two layers here. One is kind of this more conceptual layer of here's the generic resource flows in Madison, but based on what we know of specific organizations. And then there's a whole more on the ground layer under that. So you'll see the organizations pop into their proper functions and flow some resources. You'll also be able to see, we don't have much of that in there yet, actual flows of resources that exist versus potential flows, which is like, hey, I'm an urban farm and I produce raw food, and hey, I'm a food processor and I'd love some of your raw food. Like I take in raw food, and that doesn't happen now, but you'll see that appear on the map based on that potential, based on the resource type, and that's where this thought process of like how granular do you want to do this comes in. Anyway, we took a good crack at that, so that's where we're at. Great.
Thank you. So I think that we can leave off there. We'll be coming back to some of this detail because, oh, sorry, I've been meaning to show my screen instead of me this whole time, but just so you can see what Lynn was looking at, the people online. So we'll be coming back to this in detail. If there are any burning questions, we'll take them. Otherwise, we'll hear from Michelle now for the next 45 minutes and come back to how we synthesize our information. Any questions or comments before we move on? All right, Michelle, it's all you.
All right.
You and I come up here so that, or I can turn this toward you in some way.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, I move a lot. I'm
you
gonna
can
forget.
go wherever you want. I'll,
Well, I think because we have a small group, I actually wanted to sit there.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So I have 40 minutes, and so I want to divide it in two. 20 minutes, not practical at all. Just like a story of how societies are changing and what it tells us today, and then we can apply some of these lessons and see if it has any relationship to what is happening here in Nantes. Yeah, so just to tell you how I came to this. So I was kind of a leftist when I was young, in my 20s, very unhappy, on the barricades, getting up at 5 to give leaflets to factory workers and stuff. And after 7 to 10 years, it wasn't working. Remember this was the 80s, so it actually went in the other direction. So it just wasn't working. And then you have to adapt to the world, as it exists, which I really never liked, but this is the world, right? And so after a long period of kind of more like therapeutic, I was in a mess, so I had to work on myself, and then I went to the business world. So I've done startups, I've done movies, I've done different things in my life, but always with that feeling that this can't possibly be the way it was meant to be. There's in religion there's this Gnostic thing, and Gnostics are people who say like the God that has created this world must be evil, right? So they look for another one because this place is not how it was meant to be. Anyway, just kind of explaining a basic feeling, and it took me until I was 42, and I had a burnout, and I said, I can't continue like this. I have to go back to my original engagement, and then I kind of took a 2-year sabbatical, and I studied transitions. So I because my young, leftist self wasn't working anymore, and these strategies didn't seem to be working. So I thought, let's look at how it really, really happened in the past and see if we can learn something new from that. So that's what I tried to do. So the things I'm talking about is the result of that kind of searching, looking, and of course in the last 5 years, traveling, meeting people like you everywhere in the world, seeing what they're doing, seeing what's working, not working. Okay, so this is kind of a distillation of this process. So the basis of my thinking is I use a relational grammar. So looking at how people actually exchange with each other. Sorry, I can't look at everyone at the same time. So looking at how people actually relate to each other, especially in terms of livelihoods, right? So there is a guy called Alan Page Fisk. I don't recommend reading it because it's a big, boring book. It's like 700 pages. But it's called Structures of Social Life. And he says there's really 4 basic ways we can relate to each other. And here is the important thing. They've always existed, always in combinations, in every region of the world and in every period that we know. So what's the first one? Well, and I'll explain to you it historically. So when humanity started, we lived in small bands, 10, 15 people roaming, like today, what are they called in South Africa? The God Must Be Crazy. Remember that movie where
The Bushmen.
The Bushmen, right? So this is it. So 15 people, they're related to each other, and they're nomadic, right? If you're nomadic, you can't have property because everything you have to carry. So it doesn't make sense to have property. So these people are doing something called pooling. So if you're a hunter or a gatherer, whatever, you go out, you come back, it's for the group. And actually it's amazing that some of these tribes have these rules that, like if you're a big hunter and you come with a big game, you're the last one to choose your piece, right? They keep these balances, right? Because you have all this prestige, so we better make you smaller and you get a bad piece of meat, so that. so this is called, he calls this communal shareholding. So what's typical about communal shareholding is I exchange with the group and I get from the group. So this is very important. So think about today free software, Linux, and these things. How do they work? Well, I'm a developer. I'm paid or not paid, but I create this code which will be shared with everyone, right? So you cannot expect anything specific back from Linux. Like, it's not like I give this to Linux and Linux will get back to me. No, it's like give a brick, get a house. So I give something to the whole, and the whole will provide for me. Obviously, when it's digital, it's abundant. You can copy it at zero cost. Nobody cares what you take. But if you do this with the forest, the river, so these are called the commons, right? Then, of course, there are rules, and there's an economist called Elinor Ostrom. She got the Nobel Prize for it, who's been studying how people have been doing this for thousands of years. It's collectively managed shared resources, right? So if it's physical, you have to have some rules. You cannot have one person take everything out, right? So commons are always managed, especially when they're physical commons, and they have rules. But if they're digital and knowledge and culture, well, if you take it from me, I haven't lost anything. I think about music. I have a song. It's on my computer. You copy it. I haven't lost anything. I still have my. On the contrary, the fact that you shared it with me makes that song more valuable. Right? These are called networking. Okay, so this is communal shareholding. Now, what you'll notice, and now I'm really jumping already, is that historically these commons were always limited in time and space. A river, a forest, an irrigation area, because we couldn't do it in any other way. The cost of communication and organizing was very expensive, so it was local. But think about today's commons. Linux, Wikipedia, WikiHow, Wikispeed, there's tens of thousands of them. They are not limited anymore to time and space, right? Because they're digital, they're available in the whole world. And this is a big change, and I will explain when I come there, right? Okay, so second way we can do this. So at some point, some nomadic brand decided, it's nice around here. I'm gonna stay, right? So instead of being on the move all the time, they stay. And then some other families say, it's nice too. I stay here too, right? So we have this process of sedentarization, of staying put in a place. So then how would you establish a relationship with these other people? They're in the same area. Well, so this is when reciprocity becomes dominant. The gift economy. He calls it equality matching. The way it works is I with another person, or a family with another family, or a clan with another clan, or a tribe with another tribe will say, well, I'll give you this. And the person who receives it feels guilty. Oh, they gave me this, I better give something back, right? So that's where the equality matching comes in. So it's not like a market. It's not like I give $5 and I need $5 back. It's I give something, I create an obligation in you to give something back eventually. This can be very complicated. Some tribes have these very complicated circular gifts, where you give to you, and I give to you, you give to him, to her, etc., and then eventually comes back to me. So, but you see the difference between a communal shareholding and equality matching. It looks the same because it's about gifting, but it's entirely different, right? So this is the gift economy, and this is the dominant way in tribes, right? And I just try to explain to you how you go from one to the other through sedentarization, right? It's when people decide to stay put, they start building these relationships. Okay. Now, so a tribe is based on reciprocity, and for thousands of years they developed rules to make sure that nobody got richer than anybody else. So typically, for example, the North American Indians had these potlatch ceremonies where you have a big festival at the end of the year. Wow, these are great people. Look at what they could do. And then the other tribe, the other year says, we'll do the same. So that means that the surpluses are given away. The bigger you get, the more you have to give, the poorer you get. Does that make sense? So they had all these mechanisms that for thousands of years there were no classes. Like being a chief meant you had to give away everything and you would become poor, right? So you had a lot of prestige, but actually your power, your material power was diminishing. So they had all these techniques, so the theory is, how did that change? Well, the theory is that must have come from outside. So imagine that some tribe somewhere, maybe through climate change, was so stressed about its survival that decided, we got to take over the land from our neighbors, right? So that's when class society is born, where one tribe invades another, and instead of these reciprocity mechanisms, they make them slaves or serfs, or you're going to work for us. Like in India, the caste system was born that way. We know this. People who came from the north of India subdued the people of India that were originally there, and then they instituted the castes, right? And the people in the lower castes are the people who used to live there, and the people in the high castes are people who were the invaders, more or less. So in that case, so he calls this authority ranking. Authority ranking is when you get something because of your position in society. Does that make sense? So like feudalism, I'm a lord, you're a duke, you're a count, you're a baron, right? The guilds, the crafts, according to your status, you get something. Caste system is very clear about this too in India. According to your level in that system, you get more or you get less, right? PhD, you get paid better than a master's. That's the same thing, right? So this logic is the logic of the state. It's the logic of plunder and redistribute, rule and protect. So it's not all bad. I'll explain to you why. For example, think about the Incas. The Incas had an agricultural productivity that was 15 times bigger than normal farmers and indigenous tribes, right? So when the Inca would come somewhere, they would say, join us, and you can withstand floods, droughts, earthquakes, because we will help you, right? So they would take the children of the ruling family, of the chief, send them to whatever, Cusco, I guess, and they would be educated, and they actually would be also imprisoned in a way, right? Because they would be far away. So, but in exchange, they would get all this, because you cannot rule a people only through force. You have to give them something, right? Think about the Roman Empire building roads and all that stuff. We're in the British Empire building railroads. And remember how we justified colonialism was because we would civilize people, right? But that was kind of like the counterpart, right? At least some people in India and Islam would say, well, we'll abide by the empire because we're better off. Maybe not everyone, but at least parts of the population. So that's the state, authority ranking. Okay. And then we have the market. And I'm not going to explain what a market is, but everybody knows. But here's the important thing. Until the 16th century, or maybe even later, the market was always subsumed in another system, right? There's been no societies on the planet except ours that put the market on top. For example, usury was forbidden in the Middle Ages. You know, the Dominicans and the Inquisition, they have a very bad fame, right? They would not just kill heretics, they would also chase usurers. They would go in the countryside, and if what they would say, you know, he's asking for interest, they would take you away, right? Or in the cities of the Middle Ages, the city would buy the grain, and until 5 o'clock as a trader, you would be obliged to use that price, right? Or another technique was you want to do business to it, you have to ask a third person. That third person would set the price. So these were the markets in the Middle Age. Was a moral economy, an ethical. Why? Because the market itself had to follow other rules. Maybe rules that we don't like the status differences, but they had rules. Okay. So one of the so I'm reading this book. It's called The Structure of World History. One of the reasons why the West was different is because the West was at the margin of empire, right? So you had these big empires in Asia, and in Europe it was a mess. You had lords that were fighting each other, they were fighting the church was fighting the feudals. You had free cities. Nowhere in the world were there free cities. The cities were part of empire. In Europe we had thousands of free cities. They were ruling themselves, the guilds were ruling the city. That meant that the merchants gained power slowly, and then 18th century you have this absolute monarchy, and when that falls down, the merchants take power, and we get capitalism. Does that make sense? So, but now I'm slowly coming to Madison. So what it tells you, if you believe this story, right, that we always had these four things, but always something was dominating the other three. I think about dating today. Dating today is capitalism. You pay to get on a dating site. Or think about New Age religion. You pay for a workshop. That is heresy where I live in Thailand, right? You don't pay for spirituality. Right? Spirituality is you give a gift to the monk. Well, you give a gift. Yeah, I know. But you don't pay to get it, or no, you are there and then you give. And it's a gift economy in a way. But here in the West, when you do a New Age workshop, instant alignment in 4 days, you have to pay for it, right? $2,000, $1,000. So that means that logic is dominated by capitalism, right? Everything we do gets this color. Just as, for example, Buddhism, which is very egalitarian in itself, in a feudal society will become a feudal structure, or the Catholic Church was a feudal structure, right? Okay. So this is very important. The capitalists won because of the special situation in Europe and because they were already there. Does that make any sense? So capitalists won because they were there, right? They become the dominant force of society because they were going stronger and stronger, right? So they had a prefigurative economy, a prefigurative new society with new values that already existed.
They were there at the transition, do you mean to say?
Well, I'm moving to us, right? Yeah. So here's what we're doing now. So what we're doing now, and this is largely to do with technology as well, is that we have created this capacity to create large-scale commons, shared resources, which work better than what capital and the state can do. Think about it. Think about the Wikipedia. No state can do the Wikipedia. No business could do the Wikipedia. It just wouldn't work, right? They have their role. Actually, the Wikipedia very little. But Wikipedia fundraises, right, to maintain the service. So there is a role there for money, but it is under the logic of the commons. The key thing about Wikipedia is people contributing to this shared resource. That's the key of what the Wikipedia is about. So in these systems that are growing everywhere, the commons, communal shareholding, is actually the dominant force. So if IBM decides to go to Linux, which they did about 15 years ago, because they can save 90% of their internal investment, by actually pooling it with all the other companies, right? They couldn't say, well, you'll work for us. It didn't work. They had to say, well, we'll follow the Linux system with maintainers and all the stuff that Linux has invented, and IBM just has to fit in. Like, they may exploit it in some ways, but they actually, in other ways, have to be dominated by the logic of the commons of the Wikipedia, right? And so everybody amongst us who is somehow connected on the internet, who is sharing anything, who is pooling anything, is actually a commoner, right? And what I'm saying is, so this is another way societies change, right? Something is not working anymore in the old system. People leave it. They look for other solutions. So if, for example, feudalism is in crisis, then some of these landowners became capitalists, right? They said, okay, I'll chase my farmers away, get sheep instead, and I'll get richer. And those who didn't would be impoverished. The lords who didn't move to capitalism would lose out, right? So there's an exodus from the feudal system where property is based on mutual obligation. I'm your lord, but I'm going to protect you, to I have the land, it's my land, I do with it what I want. They shifted, right? And the farmers were expelled, so there's an exodus also at the bottom line. These farmers came to the cities and they were nothing. And they had to sell their labor, and they became workers, right? So it took a while. There's a book about this, The History of the English Working Class. It took about 50 years for class consciousness to grow. Does that make sense? Like that these farmers thought, no, I'm not an expelled farmer, I'm actually a worker, and therefore my solutions are not going back to the land. That solution is dead. I have to make do as a worker, and so I'm going to create unions and mutuals and fraternities. So this is the position we are in, right? More and more people are expelled from the salary-based worker condition. They become freelancers, they're networked, and they have to pool their resources to survive. It will take a while, but what I'm saying is these are the commoners. It's we. It's not out there. It's just, and some people have a bit of a part of their life in the commons, and some people have a bigger part. But more and more people have a bigger part. And I'm saying this is where the changes happen. Okay. So now we have to look if this is true. We're pooling our resources. Is how can we do this in a good way, right? And this means that we have to succeed in making the market and the state and all the other things that exist today and that are dominant and dominating us, we have to do the opposite. We have to find ways to make them work for us. Does that make sense? And here's the thing. Today, the state and the market have extractive relationships with the commons, right? They extract value from the commons. Think about Facebook. Facebook has no value without us. Like 3 billion people, maybe it's 1 billion. But anyway, all these people exchanging on Facebook, we bring our time there. It's that time that they sell for advertisers. But without us, they can't sell anything, right? So I wouldn't claim this is like working, but still, we are co-creating the value on Facebook, and what do we get in return? The use of the platform, but that's it, right? We cannot make a living even though we are actually creating value for them. So this is a problem. This means that the commons within the current extractive system, even though it's a great and useful thing, is at the same time impoverishing us, right? This is our dilemma. Uber, Airbnb, you'll be sympathetic to the argument, same thing, right? They are outcompeting the taxis by,
for free.
enabling people to share rides, drivers and users directly, but they don't invest in cars. They don't invest in anything. And of course, they're very competitive because they extract value from our sharing, right? As opposed to this older model that is represented by the taxis. So this is my point of view, right? Why are we in a transition? Because extractive models no longer work. We have reached this level at the global level that the planet is now in danger. So, we can say capitalism is flexible. It will no way. If you have an extractive mindset and practice, you're going to destroy the planet, and you create social inequalities, right? So it's no longer working. It's still working. It's still, we still have cars on the road. But think about it. If you're young today, what is the social contract that you're getting from this system? It is, I've got to pay more and more for my studies. I'll have less and less chance to have a job. And if I don't have rich parents, I'm never going to get a house. This is actively the social contract today. It's not working. And same for nature, right? So I'm saying we have to move from extractive models to generative models. So how would that work? So imagine a commons, and our commons today are abundant. The knowledge. We mutualize the knowledge we need to live and to work. Okay. That itself cannot create an income in our lives. Why? Because something that's abundant is not a market good. Nobody can sell the Wikipedia. Nobody can sell Linux. We can't do it. But around these commons, we create value-added services. Like if you do Linux, you have to install it, you have to maintain it, you have to improve it, you have to teach it, you have to certify it, right? Around the food commons, the shared flows that we share online, where's the food, who's making it? Well, we still need to work and get it out of the ground. So there's always an economy around the commons. And so the key is, how do we make that economy generative for us, right? So my advice is, let's create open cooperatives. Why open? Because they have to co-create commons. This is a critique with the old co-ops, right? Old co-ops, if they only work for their workers, they have actually the same idea than the capitalists. And I call it the democratization of rent extraction. So, we'll still extract, but we'll do it together democratically, right? And, it can work for a long time, but we know, and I know, I think your camp is different, but think about Mondragon for a moment. Mondragon is very successful, and it's much better than a multinational. But when they go to Poland, what do? They hire Polish workers at a minimum wage because they don't want to share their bonuses. Now, we can create, I don't know if that's justified or not, but this is like, you see what I mean? So I want a co-op that says that is structurally aligned to the commons. That says we're going to co-produce commons. So we are going to share our intellectual property. So no matter how selfish we are, in terms of like creating a livelihood for us in the co-op, we are still going to produce something for the common good. And that's a big difference between the old idea of liberalism. Right? Liberalism is, let's all be selfish. Adam Smith. And if we all are successful, then society will be rich. My take is that this is not working, or no longer working. So what we need to do now is, instead of saying, let's all be selfish and then have a state that disciplines us, is to say, let's create entities that internalize these ethics, right? These generative ethics. So we want to be sustainable. We agree that we will have activities that don't destroy the planet. And we want to be generative for us and for the community in which we operate. So this will require two things. And one is defensive measures. So we have a number of propositions. I'll just give you an example to show the way of thinking. So, okay, if you do free software and somebody takes it, it's not a problem. But what if you want to actually produce something physical? You want to make something. You want to create a micro factory here in Madison to make Wikispeed cars that use 5 times less fuel than what you buy today in the market. You can do this. Technically, it's possible. and it's actually road certified. So let's imagine you want to do this. And then some company says, oh, wow, here's a free design. You know, well, that's not fair, right? Because you have putting all the energy in it to create that knowledge. But you've got to pay your workers, you've got to rent a place, you've got to buy the raw materials, and you don't have the same means that this multinational company. So here's the idea. So this is called reciprocity-based licensing. So you say, this is our commons, anybody can make that car. So we don't diminish the shareability of that knowledge. Why? Because we want the whole world to do this, right? So a counterexample is cradle to cradle. I don't know if you know. Cradle to cradle is a system where every output of one production system becomes the input of another, right? So 100% circular. It's patented. It will cost you $1 million to do it. What? Imagine that. So I'm a good person. I create this cradle to cradle. It's going to save the world. Yeah, if you have $1 million. I'm sorry, that doesn't work, right? That's not ethical. If you invent a new solar panel, for me that doesn't work. I mean, you know, that's my right. So you could disagree. So what I'm saying is, make the sharing free, but make the commercialization conditional on reciprocity. If you want to make that stuff that we have developed, here are the conditions. It can be complicated, it can be simple, but you decide. As a community, you decide what is fair in terms of commercialization. I'll give you one example. Fair Shares Association is a property format. So they create companies where you have 1/4 shares for the founders, 1/4 for the funders, 1/4 for the workers, and 1/4 for the users. I like this system because it takes everybody in. You can use all their information, and they have a Creative Commons. It's like a brand of a license, non-commercial. So everybody can know how it works and apply it. But if you want to make money with it, for example, you want to certify or teach or whatever, you want to make money with this new system, you've got to be a member of the association. It costs you some money, and that's the reciprocity, and then you get a Creative Commons commercial license. Right? So that's how you create a membrane where you can still share, but you get value from one system to the other. So basically, we can't beat them anywhere at this stage, right? It's not like we can beat them right now. So what we're saying is, you can play with us, but here are our rules, right? So this is complicated work, transvestment, the flow of value from one system to the new system. Now here is the thing what I don't like, because if you talk with leftists, they always say, well, it's gonna be co-opted, right? Like Uber co-opted the sharing economy and Facebook. Yes, and what? Well, we have to do the opposite. We have to co-opt them, right? So, and that strategy only makes sense if you recognize that these four things, these four ways of dealing with each other, always have existed, always will exist. So you can't just say, let's make revolution and we'll impose one thing, right? Like communism. This one thing will rule everything. That's never going to work. It hasn't worked. Actually, if you look at it, what the Marxists did was creating empires. They were authority ranking systems, right? According to your place in the nomenclatura, you got more or less of that resource. It wasn't communal shareholding. It was actually a new form of empire, right? Okay, we can discuss this maybe. So if we want to grow our economy, our shared economy, so we need three things: sustainable, fair, and open. These are the three criteria of the new economy. Right? And at the core, you have the commons, where we share our knowledge and we put our value. Around it, we have a ethical marketplace that's not capitalistic, not extractive. It's a generative, cooperative marketplace. And then what do we do with the state? And that will be my conclusion. I think I'm over time, right? Or so what do we do with the state? Well, two things. So one of the things is the following. If you look at the history of social movements, what have we done with the state? We didn't abolish it. We didn't succeed in abolishing it. But we succeeded for a time in pacifying it, right? So think about civil rights, women's rights, gay rights. All these things are people forcing the state to say, okay, we'll also protect your rights, right? That's one thing we did. And that's not working very well right now, right? And that's what I explained the first day, right? So our system is capital, state, nation. What used to happen is the nation would, the capital, the problem with capital is they only think about themselves, so they never think about the system, right? So they destroy the system. So the nation revolts regularly, and the nation is a place of reciprocity and community, and says, no, this is not right, and forces the state to discipline the market. That's 200 years of social history, right? This pendulum between liberalization and, in Europe we say lib-lab. In Europe, liberal means right? It's free market. So we went from lib to lab, from lib to lab. Why is this not working anymore? Because the capitalist class is now transnational. So, even with Sanders or with Trump, each in their own way want to discipline capital, right? Trump is somebody who wants to bring back capital to the United States, right? He says, we have to do it here, right? That's his program. But that's why I think why it's so popular with white working class people, right? He says, enough globalization, let's bring it back. Sanders, in a totally different way, but he's saying the same thing. It's not working, we need to discipline the system again. It's not enough, because I personally think even as strong as we are in the US, it's a super big country and lots of power, I have my doubts whether you can do it in one country. Because the system has become so transnational, right? So here's my idea, and I know this is going to take time, but that's why we have to be transnational as well. We have to create transnational institutions. So the word for this is PHYLES, P-H-Y-L-E-S, comes from a science fiction book, The Diamond Age, a fantastic book. And a PHYLE is a business ecosystem that supports a community and its commons. Did I give the examples of first? Let me just give you one example. So these are people from Ecuador. Otavalo is one of the provinces. They send out people to play the pan flute and sell wool, alpaca and llama wool. And you'll find them in every European city with more than 40,000 people. They rotate every 6 months. They're not migrant, they're trans-migrants. They generate 1/3 of GDP for their community. 1/3 of GDP. Same thing, black people from Senegal selling Prada bags and Ray-Ban, supposedly, glasses. There's Sufi brotherhoods in Senegal doing the same thing globally. Yeah. So we need to do that for the commoners, not for ethnic or religious groups. We need to do that for us. We need to create these global ways. And one of the conversations I had with David, who's been fighting Uber here in Madison, is they're not connected. Like all the taxi drivers in the US and in the world have the same problem, but they're not talking to each other, right? That's why you're losing. Seriously, that's why you're losing, because they have this huge force. They have billions of dollars. They can lobby and buy politicians, and so if you don't do the same, you're gonna lose. So you have to create transnational civic organizations and transnational commons ethical market organizations at both levels. You still do your stuff locally. You're a local taxi driver, but that fight against Uber, I'm sorry, this is not a local fight. You have to do locally as well, but if you don't connect with other people, they're going to find a way to beat you, right? And you know what happened? They went to the state level. because they're organizing. They can organize at that level, and you can. So this is something we need to do. What I also advocate, and this is happening in Europe, not yet in the US, I talk about assemblies of the commons and chambers of the commons. So I think something like the mutual aid where could be the core of this, right? So the idea is let's see what we do here. Let's connect all the commoners in the locality and give them a voice. Give them a voice to talk to the state, for example. Like what you want, what you need, what regulations make it difficult to operate. Just a little innovation. This is not working yet, but I think it's interesting. My friends in Lille, in northern France, have an assembly of the commons, and they developed something called a general political license. So they're inventing this license that regulates the relationship between their assembly and politics, so that they can be co-opted, etc. I think it's an interesting approach, right? So how do we deal with these forces? Yeah. Okay. One more thing, and I'm finished. What was that? I want to say one more thing. Yeah. It's gone.
We can
yeah.
have discussion and questions for a few minutes, and it'll come back to you.
Yeah, I'm sure it's come back.
Thank you. So do people want to ask any questions or make any observations, reflections on that, whether you're online or it looks like maybe Justice has something to say?
Yeah, no, I thought that was great, and appreciate it again. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's always been great just getting to know you. Like, fundamentally, I mean, it'd be great to talk. I mean, I could quibble about a few, but there's a couple things. This is still a very European way of thinking to me. Like, as an indigenous person, a man of color in the United States, it doesn't mean it's bad or good. It's just the idea of what the commons are and like where that comes from and like what that is, I think is different a little bit in terms. And the way I would think about that is like a point charge where you have something. So the idea that it fundamentally is free to everybody. There's a lot of things about the terminology of property that just don't exist. There's no word for them in a lot of indigenous thinking. I guess that's not really the bigger point is the idea of the state and like what that means. And I think in a European context, I think in a global context, it's something much different than what we're seeing in the United States because of the nature of the democratization of capital. Like I said before, that the biggest firms in the United States are owned by millions of shareholders. And we're very much invested in this. So concurrently throughout a day, we're the 1% and the 99%, through breakfast when you look at a lot of these things. And the way that this gets at us at the biopolitical is beyond the rhetorical meaning of economics. This is something that's become very much the physiology. There's all kinds of stuff that we're doing with brains. I mean, looking at stress in essence. And so when you look at stress, and so the idea of being in one situation and the way that it has a cost on your body, it's very real, and it's not just a it's not just a rhetorical device in terms of economics. And I guess a point about the last point is about this Uber thing in Madison. And I thought that the way Michel did this on Sunday was phenomenal. We had a great conversation because what it really spoke to me, and he's there, he can correct it. But the idea, the issue with Madison is that it was in the Chomsky-esque framing. The conversation was forced into a binary, where it was like 4 cabs or 4 Uber. And the truth is that Union Cab hasn't, if you look at the demographic of Union Cab, it's better now. But historically, my father was the president of the board of directors there, and it's always been an issue when you look at these cooperatives, and the same thing that he said, these are capitalist firms. It wasn't affordable for a lot of people. I mean, it was, like we could argue about this, and the car itself is not a sustainable technology, but his point is that transportation and the movement of people is not like it's an idea, and the argument as it was fought in Madison was between cabs and Uber, and that's a lot of their challenge right now, is they're not taking into account the fact that by having it there, in essence, you're increasing the number of people I mean, in the spirit of everything we've said all week, you're increasing the number of people who don't have access to a living wage at full employment. And it isn't, and then on top of that is that it decreases the, like the likelihood that people are going to invest in public transportation or use it. A lot of the population that you're tapping into with Uber is that population, because it's not, like it cuts the cost. You're not paying it on the front end, you're paying it over time and expansion. And these conversations have not been the way that this has been framed. And I wish there was like some sound bites from what Michelle is saying about that specific topic that we could just hold on to for a second and soak in and think about what that says, not about Uber, but also about the way that conversation has been, where people have been forced in that context into these two sides, because there's just there's so many more reasons to talk about Uber than what it's done for cabs that were not really affordable to a lot of the population in Madison in the first place.
Do you mind if I just respond to this, just like another related thought? I feel, when you're talking about that, I feel like the same thing applies to sort of a lot of the concepts that we were talking about, communism versus capitalism and all these things that are totally fake binaries. And one of the things that, one of the reasons I ended up going this direction in mutual aid networks, like connecting different tools, because Bernard Lietaer, in the book that got me on this track, was writing about, there have been all these social revolutions that they keep the same fundamental economic structure. It's just who controls it, who owns it, and that structure, because of the interest component and being loaned into existence, has this power dynamic built in and will always widen the gap between rich and poor. And I feel like the binaries are kind of what hamstring us in general. It's not one or the other, like everything's in between, like it's infinite in between. So anyhow, just a point I wanted to make. I like when you said the thing about it'll be people arguing. I don't even know if it's arguing against doing something. I think people are just conditioned to tear each other down in our culture, which is another major problem that we have to overcome. But people will always do that thing, it'll just get co-opted. Well, it actually won't if you change the fundamental dynamic. You can hedge against co-optation by changing that dynamic. But I think that's the only way you can hedge against it. But I liked when you said co-opt them, because that's the whole thing about becoming the man. Like we're all about it. We want to be the job creators. We want to be the man, and just show that we're capable of it.
So, if I look at your pyramid with that scheme with 4 different relationships, the only thing I'm missing is the reciprocity logic, right? I don't see the gift economy in your system. But you have jobs, which is the capitalist market. You have mutual credit, which is ethical markets. You have pooling, savings pools, and the first one, the sharing.
Yeah.
This is pooling. So you've got pretty much an integration of different modalities. And in your system, because you put sharing at the top, you're common centric.
Yeah.
You're pooling centric. So your story fits in my scheme in that way, right? So,
we did that deliberately.
And spiral, and I can give you many examples where you see the same shift. Where what is at the core is that pooling, and the rest is adapted so that it can serve that pooling.
Right, and just real quick on the Uber thing, I don't know if you said this verbatim on Sunday or if this is just a conversation that we took from you. But the idea that Uber is only an idea, right? Like it's a need, a demand. Is someone else? I can't hear. Anyway, it's an idea or a demand that will exist for logistical support. And someone said, hey, okay, there's this idea that we're always going to fill. Now everyone has to give me some money. I think it's just a phenomenal way to think about that. And I think for the point I'm making about investment.
So I want to say something about Uber because one of the things I learned here from David was that the way it's framed, the way it's framed the debate in Europe at least is that Uber may be bad, but by itself the ride sharing is actually good for the environment, right? what I'm hearing from David is that all these people are driving around with empty cars in Madison. And so actually there's more people driving than before. I have never heard that argument, nowhere. And I've been following this very closely. So, for me, this argument, especially if it can be supported by some evidence, is something that will be useful for the whole world. And this is not happening. This kind of sharing of strategies against Uber, I haven't seen it happening. And so this is, for me, it's a weakness if social movements don't organize at that level where they can support each other through a commons, a commons of activist knowledge. What is Uber doing? What are we doing? Where are successes and failures? And to really share that at a global level. Even if you're activists locally, you need to know what's happening with all the people sharing your condition in different other places. And this is not happening right now.
5 more.
Right, and just real quick, I just want to bookmark that Uber conversation. Just was saying that, like, so the point I'm making about consumption and about investment is that Uber made it possible for many, 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 many millions more people to be invested in transportation, no doubt. But what they're using is a finite, so there's a number of paid transportation rides that are going to be taken in the universe, in the world, any given day. And what they said is that there's no reason to have a monopoly, which is what Michelle was saying, that in essence, the cab companies had was a monopoly on this paid good, which was just a form of capitalism. And they said, hey, we're going to give this to everybody. We're just going to take 30% of the whole thing, but we're going to give it to everybody. So now everybody I don't know how it is in Wisconsin, but out here, all the car dealerships are partnering with Uber because people that don't have money, you can get a loan or a lease to get a car so you can drive for Uber. And so in that sense,
the subprime loan,
you're like driving around. Right. It's exactly what that is. But the point is that, like, it is true that now more people are invested in that business. And so you have these, it's not just a company, people are eating with that money, and it's not good food, but they're able to subsist. And so we are, like, biologically bound to these companies, and that makes it's just more it's more complex because people, before you have this whole share and nobody had any access to the actual profits of it. Now that's been increased by, like, everybody.
Yeah, so David has had his hand up, and then we only have 3 more minutes for this discussion before we go into the
so this is a huge topic, and obviously it affects millions of lives, as you said. And I can speak to that for a long time. I guess what I'm more interested in is recognizing something that the sort of Uber anachronistic cab juxtaposition raises, and it's that we aren't. Uber has basically created an unlevel playing field by refusing to deal with our bureaucratic apparatus, that is insurance, criminal background checks, local safety protections, equal opportunity, and then of course they're also getting into the subprime loan racket, and it's the same entities that brought us the collapse that exposed so many more people to risk in 2008, that economic downturn that destroyed lives and pensions, etc. It's the exact same people behind them, and they're just using a different industry to carve into our economy by getting rid of regulation. The thing that's interesting to me in this context and demand is the extent to which we'll be able to negotiate with regulation and not expose people to risks. In other words, a lot of this makes sense, various health standards and whatnot, and yet at the same time have the kind of flexibility that we need. And so I mean, that's what's interesting with the Uber argument. Otherwise, it's culture capitalism 101, and that all of these people are getting their Walmart on wheels jobs is just exposing them to that much more risk. It is totally unsustainable. When bad things happen, they crush lives, and we can't support an economy like that. Our local cab companies do not expose people to that kind of risk. It's one of the most dangerous occupations. And then so therefore, health insurance and workers' comp and unemployment insurance and these things are fundamental in that industry. Uber will never do that.
It's kind of it goes along with what we were talking about yesterday. Like we're between the two different economies. Yeah, we're between. No one ever really proposed the 21st century economy, so we're between two different things that neither one of them works for people. Still, and I like what you said about the guild or the merchants, kind of filling a vacuum when the other thing collapsed, the absolute monarchy, and I feel that people have that sense too in this sort of cooperative visioning of the next economy. There's so much happening on the ground that is sort of the little seedlings that's ready to fill that vacuum. Did one of you have your hand up before, Laura?
Yeah, I have two questions actually. One is, so what I've heard in different conversations, people talking about the possibility of putting together an Uber-like app that's free, that we could use. How is that not threatening to what you do as well? And can I just add the other one real quick so I can shut up? The follow-up to that is, we're moving really, really quickly into self-driving cars. And to think that there aren't people already out there that are going, this is going to be fabulous because I don't have to pay those cab drivers. If they can figure out how to use that, and with baby boomers getting older and older, the push for that, I think, is going to be really, the demand is going to go up because one of the first things that happens is you have to take your mom's keys away. Good luck on that, And so, and besides the also what Justice was bringing up is the fact that Walmart jobs are jobs, and for poor people, that's what they do. They don't look at the bigger picture. They have to, the landlord doesn't go, well, that wasn't the right way to go. So you don't have the luxury of doing the right thing all the time. So I know that was much, but
right.
I'm gonna stop this because this is a huge. We can't answer what's happening between the cabs and Uber, and we've just identified all the trends that make everything that we're looking at require an innovative new solution that connects people, the different players' well-beings. I just want to leave it at that because this is quickly turning into an Uber conversation, which is huge, sticky wicket everywhere. And I think we're here because we've proposed a solution. Let's try something entirely different or entirely the same, connected better, based on some values that support all of the players. So I'm sorry about that. Did you think of your point that you had wanted to conclude with before?
No. It wasn't important.
So, and
my brain concluded it wasn't important.
Okay. Well, pardon?
Can I make one quick point to your point about that?
Okay.
So, but a point to what you're saying about what Michelle's saying and what we're saying, the connection between the Uber, without going to the Uber thing, is that, so what David's point is about the regulations and about the way that these economies, those regulations, if we had just a pure rideshare thing where there was no industry in that sense, those regulations still wouldn't be there, right? And so a lot of when we're looking at all these industries, and I'm looking at this map, and we look at this and we think about these, because they are in essence industries. And so when we're thinking about mutualizing them, or that there is, a lot of people, because, okay, so for instance, how one organization on this nodal chart here has value, it's us deciding it, but the way that people see that, depending on, the neighborhood and the place, they might see it being a totally different value. And so when you think about who are the people that work at the existing places now, if that was totally mutualized, if that was totally democratized, then a lot of that stuff would still have to shift, right? There wouldn't be, in essence, if we had a pure ride share, the wiki common ride share, there would be no industry because in essence it would balance itself out. And that's an important point to, at least for us to grapple with as we're thinking about all of these different organizations that currently probably have people who are the executive director who do get, when you look at who gets paid within each one of those organizations and like how much money is in them, like that is a conversation.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. And so we will have a checkout, and we're going to go around to talk about how we synthesize what's happened this week. So what we decided to do is capture our experience from the week and highlights in the week in a video today. And this next 20 minutes, we're going to go around and throw out things that we think are important to highlight and include. I ran out of paper, so I'm writing on the back of the schedule. I don't know if that helps to refer to the schedule or not. But why don't we just start throwing things out? When we think about what needs to be communicated that has happened here, what are
we popcorning or round robin?
Pardon? We can go, I always get a popcorn, but we can go around robin. But you had your hand up first, so we'll start here and just go around.
So, and again, I'm going to try and express something that I haven't really done before, although I touched on it the other day. But I envision a new economy as, I envision, am I still online, by the way? Am I speaking to you?
Yeah, we will be until the end.
What I envision is something that does recognize the experience of mutuality, the experience of reciprocity, the experience of gratuity as something that creates happiness.
Yes, okay.
And when cars take over our jobs, part of, I guess what saddens me is I feel like it's one of the very few professions that puts people explicitly in the context of a sense of mutuality, of a sense of opportunities for gratuity and back and forth and honest discourse. It's a very special space for that, and so I'll be saddened when that goes away. But we need to replace that, we need to multiply it. And I feel like that's one of the things that is not acknowledged that will sort of nourish the soul as we create a new economy.
Great, thank you. You mentioned that on the first day, and sometimes I was more explicit with that, sometimes I was less, and so that's good to have it at the top here in the synthesis. Do you have anything? And you're welcome to pass, so we'll just go around the circle.
I'll pass.
Okay.
I'll pass for now.
Okay, so this is about like what are the highlights that we include as we synthesize our week? You're passing also?
No, I'm not going to pass.
Great.
I will say something.
Excellent, because
okay.
you guys need to.
I wanted to look at everything that we did yesterday and put it into this synthesis.
Yes.
In other words,
Just speak up, please.
It's like, okay, so one way to look at this stuff is that there are these various people and organizations and relationships that know each other in Madison. And so something is starting to happen with those organizations. In the midst of this, there's a desire for that better future, better system, and it will evolve from the actual relationships coming together and doing something together and taking step by step as you have your adjacent possibilities. From here we can walk to there, and then we can walk to there. And all the time, I think it is really, really necessary to maintain a critical attitude toward everything that is going on. Because we have seen organizations that start with all the great intentions in the world and way not very far down the road, something goes somewhat sour, but they are patting on themselves on the back so much that they can't smell it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like, by the way, about Inspiral, which is one of the organizations that Michelle mentions offers, they are really intensely internally critical. Mm-hmm. They talk to each other, they argue with each other, and it's not like there are no gods among them, they can yell at the nominal president of the board of the directors if they want to, which is just this intense internal democracy, conversation, examining everything. Are we true to where we thought we wanted to go? Is this, did we end up creating some new type of inequality that we didn't see coming? So that's what I would like to put into that synthesis.
Great, thank you. John?
Yeah, I really appreciate that note towards critical thinking and open critiques that include both what we like and what we change in the future. And definitely my comment's going to come from that place. When I think of a debrief, I think of positives and deltas. What would I like to see better next time? And so as I think towards the synthesis, I think towards the challenges I had this week, I feel like I both had trouble bringing my full self into this space, and then at other times I felt like I was bringing too much of myself into this space. And so I experienced a lot of discomfort, and I think that also was a lot of positive growth as well. And I hope others felt that there was a lot of mutual growing happening here, because I definitely felt that. I think towards my biggest question to Michelle's wonderful presentation was, how do we balance these technological and economic innovations and processes with the healthy cultural and governance processes? And I'm eager to talk a bit more about what people's experience with the governance and planning exercises that we did within the space. Did we do enough? Did we do too much? How did that work for people? Did people feel like we had equal ownership of this process? And then my biggest question still, and I'm curious to hear from everyone, is, was this experience, are we doing a process that is inherently mutually beneficial as we do it, and as we look towards expanding it, and as we look to making sure it's not co-opted, or that we're not patting ourselves on the back falsely? I think that's important, just to see if are we doing the celebration, are we doing the planning, are we doing the doing, are we doing the visioning in equal parts? Is this a healthy process now and for the future? Yes.
Thanks.
Okay.
So I do want to a debrief is good and important, and we might do more of that tomorrow too. We still also want to be talking about the things we want to include in a synthesis to share out with the world. So what are the highlights that we want to be sure to put in a video too?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think the changes as well as the positives. I don't want this to be, this was all great, because some of it was very challenging.
Okay, so I have two things that actually are very parallel to what's been said before. On the one hand, you have this question of processing content, right? And then we typically get into a mode where we think that the thing we want to synthesize and share is the content of what we did, right? And I want to agree with what's been said before, that we also want to synthesize and share information about the process. I think Michelle's another person who said this in several ways this week, right? So that's one side of it. The other side, I think, needs to be in synthesis, has to do with the way I personally feel about creating hope. So there's hope without evidence, and there's hope with evidence. And I think a lot of what we do in a summit like this is we produce lenses, information sharing that tells us there's a reason to hope. And it's that blending of reason and hope that allows you, I think, to really share information with other people and not have them just say, "Oh, you're a nutcase," you're just dreaming pie in the sky kind of ideals. So I'd really like to see at least some attention given to, for example, with the Uber and taxi. I mean, essentially, monolithic organizations are running a relay race with one runner. What we're doing is running that same race with as many runners as we can engage. So you don't have to kick them in the leg, right? You don't have to sabotage their efforts because they cannot win. And when I say they cannot win, it's not hope without evidence. I can tell you why they cannot win. The metaphor is a great example, but I could spend weeks digging into this with any interested party. I believe in this stuff, and I believe it can work, and I think that hope is part of the point.
Great, thanks. Michelle?
Yeah, I remember what I want to say.
Great, and say it loud.
So something I discussed in the car with Lynn and Bob this morning. So one of the things that we didn't do much in those 4 days was actually production. So it's been a lot, except for food, right? But it's been a lot about how can we share, how can we pool, how can we, but it's stuff that's already there, right? And so I think that maybe not today or tomorrow, but maybe in a future iteration, is actually thinking through more what we can make ourselves, where that's even a bigger revolution than just kind of like consuming differently what capitalism is already making for us, but actually thinking through, well, maybe there's a lot of things that we can make here and make a living out of it that wasn't possible 10 or 15 years ago. So the production, making, and some attention to these new potentials that are there around it, I think that would be interesting, especially in connection with the cooperative program from the city. That could be invested in some of these more promising things.
Great. So I'm just taking my turn and then going to the online people. So in terms of the content things, when you're talking about blending of reason and hope, I feel like demonstrating a little of that with the S-curve is cool because I felt like that is a really good way to sort of run some simulations to show that we have some evidence for the level of hope and optimism we have. And then also some of the things with ants and their information trail finding the food source, I think that is really interesting. And I want to document the intentions, like the laying out of intentions and how they help shape that 0 degree and 1 degree, for example. And then in terms of the production, also, yes, that's a longer term thing, and we have so much less experience with that I think it would be really good to sort of document some of the elements that can lead to that as a longer term, but not starting way in the future, but elements that can lead us into the production space. So I feel like that would be a way that we can represent that intention and the fact that we're not there yet, but communicate it in a way that shows there's some hope with evidence there also.
Which there is.
Yeah.
Spent a bunch of time with Steve yesterday.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in case you couldn't hear, do you want to just say that again?
Oh yeah, I was going to say there definitely is evidence on that. We spent quite a bit of time with Steve yesterday, and I should have mentioned that in the summary, just documenting all the worker co-ops, and they struggled with how to connect this stuff. It's sort of random and specific, but I think that the opportunity to look at resource flows there in conjunction with all this other stuff, which they haven't really integrated, is a real opportunity to bring that piece into the mix.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
One of the worker co-ops is engineers and creates manufacturing systems.
Excellent. Is that ISNIS engineering?
Yes, yeah.
Cool.
Yes, they create assembly lines, design and create assembly lines. And here's the
Great.
state Oscar Mayer plant.
Yes.
So I there's all kinds of.
And another great example of how bringing people from out of town really helps the people in Madison connect with each other more. It's wonderful. So I'll give everyone online a chance so you can jump in and say what you would include in a video that synthesizes this week. So some people I think are just joining us for the first time. You're welcome to say something, or you're welcome to pass if you want to. So just going, actually, why don't you just unmute your microphone if you would like to say something now, so we don't spend a lot of time. So we're talking about what we include in a video or a general synthesis of this week's work. Justice?
Okay, so first, I just want to acknowledge everybody's work. It's been amazing and humbling to work with everybody. This work isn't for the faint of heart. I'm sitting here for the very beginning of this. I was sitting with a friend of mine who's a physicist here in this office, and human beings, we cannot destroy the planet. It turns out, even with all the nuclear weapons and everything else, we could never destroy it. We could destroy ourselves, though, and it's important for us to think about that, right? And fundamentally, I always feel like whenever you're in the same grid coordinates, it's a little bit of military, but when you're in the same grid coordinates as any other person, the likelihood, that no matter how apparent our differences may be, that we're all sitting there, right? And at some level, I think you could get into this in a little bit of in terms of the bio, the air, we're all kind of connected. I've been humbled coming back here, and I'm going to get to your thing, Stephanie. I had to come back and put my suit back on and go out and look at some housing stock. And I was thinking about the conversations that everyone was having there and thinking about the realities of the people who I was talking to here in Boston. And I think the necessary space for the dissent is necessary for the health of the collective. And that is essential for democratization. And it's something that we can think about as a lesson or something to put forward, is that's the thing, that the temporal imperative that creates, or that is the foundational food for insecurity, is why we're so afraid of that, right? And it's fine, like the disagreement in thermodynamics, without friction, there is no movement. We need that. And it's the thing that, I think I just am very humbled to share that space with you guys. And that's one thing. But the second thing, all over the United States, I'm working with organizations who are addressing, I had mentioned Pine Creek yesterday. I could talk about Mao Farms in Hawaii, in San Diego with the Opus Project, in Oakland, the EMS, all over the place. And the programs that are the most effective, even with veterans, and they might not call it this, but the places where we're seeing it is where they're touching on this accidentally, and they're just stumbling into it. And a big thing is that this isn't about a political ideology. This is about the health of our children. The taxi cab, not the taxi, but the Uber thing is not about taxi cabs. It's about the health and well-being of people. And this, the big thing here is to not let this conversation become politicized, because really we're talking about humanity, and we're talking about our ability to walk in a space that's safe and to operate in the ways that allow or are conducive for love. The things that Michelle brought up, the things that make us unique, and people, Donna Haraway and et cetera, they'll disagree or they'll have a problem with my statement, but we make music and art, and if you think about not in the conventional sense, but when you have a health of the collective that is willing to provide a benefit to the aesthetic benefit to the whole at an optimality where it's not taking anything from it, and when you think about it from that lens, this is about our song, this is about our art. And that's what this is about. And just to not let it politicize. But, it's been amazing just getting to know you guys. It's been great chopping it up. I'm out here.
Thank you very much. And then, Kurt, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you. I guess I would like to bring back the thought that I have repetitively, universal design, as we think of sharing something out and the potential audience and the potential of where it could be shared in terms of diverse abilities, in terms of disabilities, in terms of closed captioning, in terms of visual for those that are deaf and hard of hearing, the sound that we have available for those that are blind, and look at our meetings and find out, why are there not more people with physical disabilities participating in this knowledge commons and in the brainstorming summits, and look at what we're doing logistically, the Uber conversation, the taxi cab conversation. We're going to be talking about that in a statewide level on Monday. Basically, the disability sector, again, is firmly anchored in 25% of the planet. And so when we don't have this mastered, we are right off the bat succumbing to saying a 75% solution is okay. I have been a performance water skier for 30 years, water skiing for 35 years, doing adaptive water skiing for 25 years, and last night I enjoyed having sign language interpreters for the first time in the history of mankind, because I'm looking at this flaw of humanity, that we are depleting our human resources, not mastering the disability topic. I profess that the masters of ability are people with disabilities, and I ask for that to be considered when we share our message.
Thank you, and I'll just ask you to help us do that. I know little bits about, having it closed caption and stuff, but it's not something that I'm really familiar with. I'm sure I would overlook a lot of things. So I would just ask, and you are engaged in a whole lot of our work, so maybe you can be part of helping us build the capacity to be sure that we're always looking at that. And thanks for reminding us. Steve?
I'd be happy to do that.
Cool, thanks. Steve?
Hello. I would like to see us include, some ideas about making our decisions based on data. And I want to give some kudos to Bob and Lynn and to Paul Hartzog for their contributions to the theory end of this. I think it's important to make the tools responsive to different frames that come up based on the data. And I'd like to see that. And then something about implementing those tools at the local level. And I agree that you're working in the frame of Madison, so the network diagram that you're working on now is developing, and I'd like to see that kind of text included. One more comment. I think in the gestalt of all of this, that the most important thing that we can consider are our relationships with each other, within our groups, our relationships across groups with individuals of other groups, and our relationships between groups. There was an article that's been in the blogosphere, probably on the P2P stuff is where I found it, and I've had a hard time tracking it down, in Nature magazine, called Small Groups and Long Memories Promote Cooperation, and that's because if a group is small enough to understand in taking care of the commons, who in their group is likely to abuse that, then they can take action proactively to say, okay, well, we're going to structure this way, so, Gene, whoever, you always need to have somebody accompanying you when you go to the commons, or something like that. I mean, that's farcical, but the trick then is to figure out how to, in the light of technology, keep our groups small and our memories long, without falling into the trap of, for lack of a better term, I'll use monetizing or exchangifying everything, without losing that natural ability to share that we have in small groups. I guess I'm complete.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Laura?
I guess I would really like to see if we can start getting some of these ideas and the concepts and like the ants stuff is really powerful, but getting into some kind of format that somebody that has a really limited education can totally grasp, because I understand a good amount, but I find it challenging, and I think it will help us to engage a lot more people if we can speak in more, I don't know, the common sorts of language.
Totally. I'm going to let you respond after we finish going around the circle because I'm one more person.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
No, I just, real quick, when Howard Reingold and I put together the cooperation commons with the Institute for the Future that they showed earlier this week, we did one sentence summary, one paragraph summary, and then a longer summary of all of the academic work about catalyzing cooperation that we put into that database. And it was precisely to address that need. We never built the visualization tool. The idea was to have a way that people who just wanted to get an overview could engage at the first level. And if they wanted to drill down on anything, then they could go to the paragraph level. And if they wanted to drill down even further, they could go to the full page level, right? And so people could take the topics they were interested in and engage with those more fully, and then be able to skim over the other ones, but still be able to absorb the knowledge at the level that they chose to.
Yeah, and that's actually, so we have so much building to do online. That's been a goal of ours for a really long time, is just have like tiny little snippets that can link into much deeper and more complicated things, including, we've talked about it a couple times this week as we were doing the posterity budget, how each line item for the budget needs to be a link that then shows you all the different ways you could save money and different kinds of supports you could create for those lines. So we have plenty of work to do, but it's much clearer what we do now. So we have a few minutes. We have 9 minutes to close out this meeting. There's some people online we haven't heard from at all. I'm just going to open it up to parting thoughts. I won't go around this circle, so this will just be popcorn style. We have one more of these sessions, and this will be available online tomorrow. So that's the one where we're connecting with people from South Africa and Berlin, and also from Shareable in this country, and learning about complementary efforts and sharing with them what we are doing. Anyone have a parting thought for today? Starting with anyone who's with us online. Aiden or Angela, would you like to just say hello and goodbye so we can at least meet you before we part ways today? I don't know if you're available to unmute. And while we wait and see, and no obligation, anyone who's joining us online have a parting thought for today?
Can you hear me, Stephanie?
Yes.
Oh, okay. This is Boyd Rossing. I sort of discovered what we were doing as the week went by. So I'll be speaking as someone that came into this with, knowledge of community and issues and so forth, but not knowledge of many of the elements that were at work in this week. So, for example, not a lot of knowledge about time banking and bands and so forth, not a lot of knowledge about creating digital mapping processes and open sharing of those, not a lot of knowledge about the livelihood idea being integrated. So as I went through the week, it took me a while to sort of get a read on what was happening, because I was frustrated early by deeper issues that we seem to be glossing over. But as I went through the week, I started to shift my view that what this was a space for some key thinkers who are at the cutting edge here of creating these digital technologies to visually display the kind of mutuality that's going on in a place like Madison as a vehicle then for doing things. And I began to appreciate the reason for the high pace was to create a working structure to connect all these things. Now, I think for every actor, there was probably a different level of understanding of the pieces that were being integrated. And so it was difficult to stay with that. When any one of the pieces that got questioned, there wasn't much time to really examine it. So anyway, that was my experience. I don't know how that affects taking this forward, but there will be other people brought into this like me who it'll take them a while to sort of grasp all these pieces together. And the other piece I wanted to put out was I tried to raise questions about race and culture and poverty from time to time around the questions of, how might others look at this or use this, or are they at the table influencing it? And I think everyone in the room understands that's not only a general concern for this work globally, but in particular in Madison, we have a very glaring issue of race and mistrust and lack of engagement. So I just want to leave this lingering thought that in our process, I hope we can find ways to move quickly and do this really remarkable visualizing of what's on the ground, because that's really powerful, and building on that. But beware that as we move really fast with technical people, there is a history of that excluding voices and opinions and other cultures and other histories. And while we can justify it maybe for a week here or a week there, at some point we have to step back and ask about that, because you know, that's my pet project, is to juxtapose sustainability and justice so that issues about race and inclusion don't kind of get bypassed because of the pace of the process. So in closing, I'm astonished to see what, and I can't credit Stephanie for all this. She obviously has lots of partners, but the scale and the pace of this work that she's doing and advancing around the world, it's just remarkable, and I'm glad to be a part of it. But I did want to raise those questions one more time.
Thank you. All right, Justice?
Could I just respond to the voice? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Who's talking?
Steve, I wanted to just respond to Boyd. I completely agree with your comments, and I've been struggling this week a little bit with how do we blend the technology and the geophysical disparity. But at the same time, I've been hearing on some of the work that I've been doing that we are excluding whole populations by focusing on the technology. So I think it's a case of both and. We both have to go digital first, and we have to understand where digital is not a possibility and transfer between those two modalities.
Great, thank you. So we have 3 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask everyone to just share a brief parting thought. Justice?
I thought Michelle was going to do his second 20 minutes. I was waiting for that brother to get done. Nah, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it. A few things. So in parting, again, it's amazing, and every time I have to actually go back to work, I always miss that space. I want to say this to Boyd and to everyone about that conversation. There's 7 billion modules on this planet. In any given room, we're going to not have all of them there. But the big thing is that we look at each other and say, all right, so we're here. And I always say palabras, and palabras, I guess some people look at it as words, but in my understanding of it, it's much more than that. It's like we were all there. And so in a week or in a month or in a year, if you saw me and you said, hey, you know what, I'm going to accuse you of being in that space with me once upon a time, but I have enough evidence to prove myself guilty based on what I've done since then. And I'll say, look if we're going to take this out for a ride, I'm talking to Boyd, I'm talking to Steph, I'm talking to people who are there in Madison, I'll come back next week, and we can start doing this with this Cards for Community thing. If we really think that this can happen, I'm down. I got the time. So let's turn it. Let's make it alive. It's not. I got energy, and this stuff gets me fired up.
Awesome. Thanks. Anyone else in the room? David?
I want to echo that. It's so inspiring to be a part of this space. Again, to use that term, nourishing within an age that can be so alienating. It's something that really rejuvenates me and gives me a lot of energy, and I love that. And I think that it's such an essential, prefigurative kind of component of what we are, whether it's at our kitchen tables or it's something more organized like this. So just the more the better.
Cool. So any others?
Yeah, I just I like Justice's comment towards don't let this become politicized, as that's not conducive for love. I just want kind of a stream that was coming to me throughout this conversation, even I think from Bowen's talk, Michelle's talk, is that identity politics are really I think we were talking towards the binary framing
of things, and how that it just strikes me, I think, towards Naomi Klein's story of getting out of the identity politics movement and into the climate change work she does now. And I just think identity politics are a tool that should be compartmentalized in this sort of experiment. But the personal is political, I think. And I think that's also important too. So I'm curious, as we debrief over the next 2 days, to learn more about how do we put these social construct thinking, you know, looking back, looking forward, into context, but also not overwhelming, and so that we can do collaborative production here and now, and do it in an experiential way rather than just talking about it.
Cool, thanks. And with that, I want to invite you all to some other things. So just to remind you that this week is focused on tech, because this is the Madison Mapping Summit, where we invited specifically techies to come and work on these systems on behalf of mutual aid networks and the vision. And the vision has been built on many years working with people on the ground in physical proximity. So first of all, I'm going to invite you to participate in anything and everything that Dane County Time Bank is doing. You can go to meetings of Allied Community Co-op, or meetings of establishing neighbor care teams in Sun Prairie, or meetings establishing neighbor care teams in Black Earth, or any other restorative justice stuff we have going on. So this is emerging from real people with a lot of different characteristics in this area and happening in different communities around the world. So it is a balance between going back and forth between the technical and infrastructure supports and real people, in real life. And what we talk about a lot with mutual aid networks is, I think, the piece that we fill that is overlooked by the vast majority of complementary currency type efforts is we do really focus on the social piece. We have a lot about governance and how people work together. And you will have an opportunity to really dive into that August 22nd to 28th, where we host our next Man Up Skillshare Summit. So we're going to have people from different really cool initiatives on the ground in lots of different places, but especially St. Louis, hopefully, definitely Lansing, hopefully Detroit, Pennsylvania, a lot of different locations where you can really see how people apply this on the ground, and we'll do a lot of back and forth. So people will skill share how to do things in your own community, and at the same time, we will be sure that everyone's really up to speed on using our project management tools and exchange software. So we'll be really integrating the technical and the social community action piece in August. So we go step by step, and I really appreciate your bearing with it. And it's been a long week, but also a fast pace. I really appreciated that we've had a lot of time together each day, all week, to really let these things emerge and kind of get to a more common understanding of some really complicated stuff. Did you have one last thing? Okay, Bob, and then Michelle, and then we'll hang up.
Yeah, just one quick thing. We seem to be here, Lynn and I, to represent technology. But the only reason that we're here is a whole bunch of people doing stuff on the ground. If it wasn't for that, we would not be here. The technology is secondary.
Absolutely, thank you. And you embody that all the time.
Yes, I just want to thank you. I'm sure everybody wants to, for pulling this off. And maybe I don't see things, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I feel kind of the way we interacted. I think that the people who wanted to talk got their chance, and that I haven't felt like power fights or. So I think in a way this is the way it should be. I guess some people should have been here or could have been here who were not here, and that's another issue. But at least for the people who were here, my feeling is that everybody had an opportunity to participate, and nobody was put down. So thank you for pulling that out. It's not always obvious.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us online, and we will see some of you tomorrow. Take care.